Today's story takes us to South Africa, the city of Pretoria, with a population of about 2 million people. Among the many people who live in Pretoria was Oscar Pistorius, the famous Paralympic champion. He was born, raised, and lived in South Africa, but was actually of Italian descent. Oscar was born on November 22, 1986, with a serious malformation. The child had thin, underdeveloped feet, with only 2 toes present on each. Parents were very upset. Quarrels often broke out between them. And despite the fact that there was a boy older than Oscar in the family, and after his sister was born, his parents decided to divorce. But even after that, the father supported the family financially, and Oscar's mother instilled in her son that you cannot give in to circumstances. It is necessary to fight. The boy grew up a very active child, and at the age of 1 year, he had an operation to remove underdeveloped limbs below the knee. And at the age of 17 months, Oscar was fitted with his first prosthetic limbs. Over time, the prostheses were changed, the child grew, his successes grew. Oscar was imbued with the spirit of competition and decided to devote himself to a sporting career. He practiced rugby, water polo, but in his teenage years he got an injury to his kneecap, and then he was advised to take up athletics for rehabilitation. As time went on, Oscar became more and more involved in the sport and found that he was attracted to great speed, namely short-distance running. At the age of 15, Oscar's mom died, and he suffered a nervous breakdown. As the boy had a close bond with his mom, she was his friend and supported him in all his endeavors. But despite the severity of the loss, Oscar did not give up his training and persevered towards his goals. His perseverance and hard work paid off, and in 2004, at the age of 17, Oscar won bronze at the Paralympic Games in Athens in the 100 meters and gold in the 200 meters. In 2007 in Rome, Oscar competed in the 400 meters and again showed his skills by finishing second. This guy was very young when he achieved goals and results unimaginable to many. He was already starting to get the attention of the media and people who followed athletics. Oscar was dubbed by fans with a nickname Blade Runner, perhaps because of his prosthetics, which are an elastic plate in the shape of a question mark, or maybe because of his speed at the limit. Oscar has had a life full of successes that an amputee could only dream of. And it was in 2012 that Oscar's athletic career peaked. And it was during this period that he met Reavey Stink, a 29-year-old South American model and law school graduate. They were introduced by a mutual friend named Justin. And between the young people ran a spark, but it was still far from the feeling that is called love. And the first time Oscar and Reavey met, corresponded, and they officially got engaged only in 2013. Reavey was born in Cape Town, where she lived with her father Barry, mother June, and 2 half-brothers, her father's children from a previous marriage. The family later moved to Port Elizabeth, where the girl went to university to study law. She was not only smart, diligent in her studies, and received a diploma with honors. She was also very beautiful. From the age of 14, Reavey worked in modeling, and if at first it was just as a hobby, then with age Reavey began to take her work more seriously. At the age of 29, she was already the face of fashion magazines, and since 2010, she has been a frequent guest on television and a participant in various show programs. It should be mentioned that Reavey's life was not always in the pink color. At the age of 20, the girl had an accident when she was riding. Reavey's father was a famous horseman and was engaged in the fact that bypassed and trained horses. He taught his daughter to ride from an early age, giving little Reavey a pony to start with. When she fell off a wayward stallion in her 20s, Reavey suffered a serious injury to her lower back and had to almost relearn how to walk. But in 2012, she was healthy, rich, and famous, no less than Oscar. When the acquaintance between these two celebrities happened, they didn't plan anything for the future. But coincidentally, their second meeting happened at a major event where Oscar was being honored with an award, and they both get caught in the frame. Journalists found them a beautiful couple, took a lot of photos, and even asked them a few questions. I must say that both were professional in their work. Both are beautiful young people, and from the outside it seemed that they were actually a couple. And as mentioned earlier, the young men eventually felt a liking for each other, started dating, then got engaged. And on Valentine's Day, February 14th, 2013, the couple agreed to spend the evening together at dinner at Oscar's house to celebrate 3 months of relationship. Oscar lived in a mansion, a residential neighborhood in which all the houses were practically, like his villa, enclosed on 4 sides by a high fence for security purposes. Naturally, the residents of this neighborhood were all very wealthy and could secure themselves with all available means and ways, including CCTV cameras, locks, locked access, guards. These cameras, which were at the entrance, caught Oscar and Reavey's arrival. The young people had a romantic dinner with candles and went to bed. Late that night, someone contacted the police saying they heard gunshots right in the community where Oscar lived. The ambulance and police arrived and proceeded immediately to the house, near which curious and disturbed people were already crowding around trying to find out what had happened. The paramedics who entered the house found the girl lying on the bathroom floor, covered in blood. They examined her and realized she would no longer need their help. She was dead. There's another person in the house. This was Oscar, who was in a state of shock. The police tried to calm him down, but the guy was in such a state that he didn't understand anything because of what they were telling him. He was crying, screaming, and managing to explain to those around him what had happened. "I killed her. I thought it was a robber." As Oscar's words implied, he and Reavey had gone to bed after dinner. Waking up early in the morning, Oscar went to the balcony to get a fan, as the morning promised to be hot, and suddenly heard sounds coming from the bathroom. He knew that Reavey was sleeping in the same bed with him. He didn't even look at her direction, but fearing that burglars might have entered the house, he groped around and pulled out the pistol he always kept on hand from the nightstand. It must be said that in his youth, Oscar had been attacked by a deranged man who had been repeatedly threatened by envious and ill-wishers, so the presence of a gun and the increased security of the house explained his caution. Since Oscar was not wearing his prosthetics that morning and was getting around without them, he felt vulnerable, so when he heard rustling outside the bathroom door, he started shooting at the door in an attempt to be proactive. Unfortunately, there was no thief or intruder in the bathroom, only Reavey, who woke up and went to the bathroom towards morning. As soon as the girl realized that a tragic mistake had been made, she screamed to get attention, but the first shot was followed by others. Neighbors heard the screaming gunshots, called the police, and the police arrived and arrested Oscar. And, by the way, the gun he had was not officially registered, and the guy had no right to own it. The autopsy showed that the girl was shot 4 times. The first bullet hit her in the thigh, the second ricocheted off her back, the third shot hit her shoulder, and the last one, the fourth, was fatal because it hit her head and killed the girl instantly. In the early hours of the morning, the phone rang at the Stinkamp family home in June. Reavey's mother looked fearfully at the phone. She hesitated to answer it as she knew that at such an early hour only bad news was to be expected. Inspector Botta had given the woman the sad news, and the whole world had collapsed for her. She could barely hold on to the wall as her legs weakened. Reavey's father had suffered several heart attacks since the news. Their daughter was next seen by her parents only when saying goodbye at the crematorium. Reavey's mother immediately told police that she had suspicions about Oscar because her daughter and her boyfriend had not been getting along for a long time, despite still being together. Their relationship, which was only 3 months old, had run out of steam and was beginning to come to an end. Reavey's friend also confirmed this. She was told by Reavey that she was dating Oscar on Valentine's Day, and she wanted to clear things up between them and break up, remaining friends if possible. These two versions of the mother and girlfriend coincided. While Oscar's entourage said otherwise, his friends claimed that Oscar was very happy in his relationship with Reavey. The murders of a famous model by an equally famous Paralympic athlete were covered by many popular media outlets, and different people had different views on the tragedy. Some believed in Oscar's version of the story, i.e. the fact that it was an accident. Another part of the society was inclined to a more violent development of events, suspecting that Oscar originally had a plan to kill his girlfriend. There was no unanimous opinion among the authorities either. As for the version told by Oscar, there were many things in his case that matched everything the guy told in a perfect way. Let's go back to the very beginning of the couple's relationship. So many friends of Oscar and Reavey claimed that they were really in love with each other. And yes, Reavey's friends also confirmed that the girl was thrilled with her new love. She had a somewhat tumultuous past with other men. Some of those relationships turn out to be toxic, and Reavey was happy to finally find a normal guy. The police had in their possession CCTV footage from 2 days before this incident at a certain supermarket, and it shows a couple hugging, exchanging kisses, and being perfectly happy while shopping. They didn't look like a couple about to break up. Of course, anything is possible, but this CCTV footage was used as evidence by the investigation. And there's another confusing point. Reavey's friend said that the girl was going to come to Oscar's house on Valentine's Day and announce her decision to break up. That seemed very strange. First of all, why was it necessary to talk about breaking up on such a romantic day? And two, in Oscar's house, during the search, the police found a gift that Reavey had prepared for her boyfriend. It was a colorful, decorated frame with a collage of photos of Reavey and Oscar in their happy moments. The gift was accompanied by a short note with romantic words from which it was clear that Reavey loved Oscar. Therefore, it is hard to believe that she was going to dump her boyfriend before giving a romantic gift. The trial was publicized and broadcasted on many channels. Thus, the whole world heard another important information that was quoted in the trial. It was the fact that Oscar was very worried about security and fear that someone might break into his house at night. This was a fear that the athlete had from a very young age, and it is possible that this fear was passed on to him from his mother. When Oscar's parents separated, his mother was left to live with the children in a cottage, and one day, a thief broke into their home. And since Oscar had used prosthetic limbs almost from birth, he took them off at home and therefore felt vulnerable, as he would not be able to escape in case of anything. And this was confirmed not only by Oscar's psychologist, but also by his brothers, his friends. And the gun that was in the guy's hands that early morning, which he possessed illegally, without a license, he needed to defend himself. Now that you know all the points in Oscar's favor, let's move on to the evidence that the prosecution has put forward. Reavey's mother, Juna, immediately told police officers that her daughter's relationship with Oscar had recently broken down. Reavey's friend confirmed this, plus some neighbors. The woman who heard Reavey scream the night of the murder was present at the trial and described the scream as a cry of fear and terror, as if Reavey feared for her life. Another neighbor, a man who was on the defense side, was also called as a witness and said that he too heard the screams, but was 100% sure that it was a man, not a woman, who screamed. And one more thing that was found out during the proceedings, Reavey was found on the bathroom floor, the door was locked with a key, the girl had her cell phone with her. Of course, there is nothing strange in the fact that the girl got up in the night and went to the bathroom, and the fact that she locked herself in can be explained, but the fact that she took her cell phone with her raises questions. The prosecution, for its part, after looking into Oscar's background, learned that a few years ago he was driving a motorboat on a river and crashed into an obstacle. Help arrived in time, and Oscar was taken to the operating table, where his jaw was set, broken ribs were repaired, and he received more than 100 stitches. He was diagnosed with a concussion, and the athlete was in a coma for several days. According to the records of the police who arrived at the scene of the accident, many empty beer bottles were found at the bottom of the boat, and eyewitnesses confirmed that Oscar was driving, screaming like a madman, laughing, while the boat was traveling down the river at unimaginable speeds. After the accident on the river, Oscar claimed that he was not intoxicated, but tests done by the police proved otherwise, and in addition, it became known that the athlete had a long-standing addiction to alcohol. On March 3, 2014, the trial for the murder of Reavey Stink began and ended on September 12. Oscar Pistorius was found guilty of manslaughter in Reavey's murder, as the judge found that Oscar had no intention of killing his girlfriend. The court sentenced him to 5 years in prison. In any case, it was a lenient sentence. With good behavior, the athlete could be free on parole in a few years. Oscar had many enemies. Not in vain he feared for his safety, but the most insidious appeared after. Prosecutor Jerry Nell, nicknamed Bulldog, having familiarized himself with the case of the athlete, muttered, "Complete bullshit, dude is making a mess," and began to look for inconsistencies, as they say, digging the ground. Jerry was a professional. He saw in front of him a man who killed another man. He wanted fair justice. Passing through several courts, Jerry achieved that the ridiculous sentence Oscar canceled, and 2 years later Oscar was again in the dock, accused of the premeditated murder of Reavey. Before the start of the hearing, the prosecutor wanted to meet with Oscar privately while he was under house arrest. The prosecutor began by reminding Oscar that his home was surrounded by a 3-meter fence with live wire across the top, had an expensive security system installed, and had motion sensors installed everywhere. So where did the thoughts of burglars come from? A cover-up found food in Reavey's stomach that she had eaten at 1 a.m., and it turns out the couple didn't go to bed that night. The prosecutor speculated that Oscar started giving Reavey a jealousy scene. She got ready to leave, the guy freaked out, and when the girl panicked and locked herself in the bathroom, he started shooting. There are still many questions: why Oscar started shooting, why he didn't call the police after all the robber had closed the bathroom, and why he didn't stop after the first shot when Reavey started screaming. Oscar had not from the pressure with which the prosecutor described the events of that night and found no words to object. Jerry Nell promised Oscar to meet in court and find answers to many more questions. A trial was soon held, and the judge sentenced the athlete to 6 years in prison, not much different from the original sentence. Later, when Oscar's lawyers tried to appeal the sentence, it would be extended to 13 years and 6 months. In 2023, Oscar could qualify for parole, and currently he is still serving his sentence in prison, despite the fact that the athlete has asked to be transferred several times. Oscar, for some reason, feared violent acts from other inmates, but his request was never granted. So ended the career and fame of runner Oscar Pistorius, a national hero, an athlete who with one shot interrupted not only a man's life, but also his great future. Thanks for watching. I recommend watching the other 3 extreme stories. Click right now, and don't forget the bell and subscribe to my channel.